Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ron Strove, and I'm Executive Director of Info Tools, and we're the sponsors of the DIVA Awards. I'm standing in for my colleague Patricio Pagani, who unfortunately is flat on his back with influenza, has been instructed not to get out of bed for at least another week, so that he, while he's infectious. So while he's lying down, I'm standing in. So I'd like to, first of all, the session is in two parts. The first part is a panel discussion around the issue of insights and visualization. And the second part is the announcing of the DIVA award itself. So just to start off, I'll introduce the panelists. So on my immediate right is Jason Anderson, President and Founder and Chief Ninja of Insights Meta, the market research gamification agency. Jason started his visualization interests by designing fonts on the Timex Sinclair 1000 at the age of 6. I believe before moving on to bigger things like video games. Is that some
Games are much more lucrative than fonts, yes.
Right. Okay. Next to him we have Tony Costello. I first met Tony about 3 hours ago. And Tony is VP Senior Business Leader of Strategy and Operations at MasterCard Worldwide in Belgium. Now, I believe you had dinner with the pop star Prince. Now, was that before he changed his name and became known as the pop star previously known as Prince?
I think it was while he was still the artist formerly known as, and before he went back to being called Prince again.
Right.
And he's as short in real life as everyone says.
No, it's right, because it seems he probably lost some brand equity there for a while, and I just wondered if you might have had anything to do with that.
No, nothing to do with me.
No. All right. And next to Tony, we have Tom de Rijk, who most of you would have seen this morning. And I believe, Tom, that you're standing in for Carly Portman of Direction First in Australia, and that you're the managing partner of Insights Consulting. Is that right? Okay. Actually, I'm not sure it's a good excuse, really, not showing up just because you're from Australia. Australia is still on the same planet, and I had to fly in from New Zealand as replacement, and that's even further. So
they knew they had a good replacement by sending me.
So
probably
okay, right. I've got it. Reason. Yes, yeah. Of course. Okay, of course. And finally, on my far right is Gerard Loeschilder, who's an independent research consultant with 25 years of market research experience. And I believe that your particular interest and belief is in the storytelling of insights and using visualization, and that you practice your storytelling by telling bedtime stories to your kids. Is that right?
Telling bedtime stories to kids is a very good way to practice your market research capabilities.
Right.
If you can make them believe. How long, for example, we have St. Nicholas in Holland, so my KPI is to keep them believing in that for as long as possible by telling the great story about it.
Okay. All right, well, I have a series of questions to ask of the panel, as provided by my colleagues, so I'm duty bound to follow those. So away we go. First question, is there a difference between data visualization and infographics? if I could start on my immediate right.
I would say yes, for us there's a difference between data visualization and infographics. It's more of a perception thing than anything else though. You'll usually see infographics used in the context of public marketing or social media marketing or something like that. For us, they've never felt quite as data rich, whereas data visualization usually brings up images of things like Tableau and complex renderings of multidimensional data and whatnot. So we've usually treated them as separate.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, and I think it's, for me internally, we use all manner of different ways to bring data to life. And it was interesting listening to the last panel discussion as well around bringing the consumer into the room. And infographics can be a great way of doing that. It can be a great way to bring research or insights to a very large group of people. We use infographics, for example, internally to share to our entire employee audience if we want to share something more broadly. It doesn't have the depth, as you say, or the interactivity to really dig into the data, but as a way to give a couple of snippets and get people interested and excited, it can be a very valuable tool. But obviously, as you say, it doesn't have the ability to really be able to interact with it, and then the researchers and the people who really want to make the business decisions from that data will want something richer than pure infographics.
Yes.
I like that term, bringing data, or maybe better, consumer insights to life is probably a better term than data visualization. And I think infographics is just a part of that bigger space of what we need to do in terms of creativity to bring actually the beautiful insights that we find in research to life. So I would like to call it more like bringing insights to life. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Being last, it's almost impossible to disagree. So, no, but you know, data visualization is more like, I was thinking about an analogy. I like to think in terms of examples, and it's if you watch 50 Shades of Grey. Now, data visualization is to see the 50 shades in the data and to see it from every different angle. Now, infographics is more about what you do with that insight once you've gained that, and the so what, the implication of that, and that is to bring that to life in a lively way. That is indeed what infographics are all about. So seeing the movie 50 Shades itself.
Okay.
Just something I might add to that as well. Infographics are usually designed with shareability as one of their aspects, and so data visualization may require certain software or technical backend that is not as easy to distribute to consumers or to employee bases or even broadly inside of a client organization. So that's another way where we've sort of split those two things off.
Okay. So it seems the consensus is that they are quite separate. Just let me argue with that. I mean, I think someone should challenge that. Is there a case or an opportunity for having both, so that perhaps the infographics is sort of what lures people in, and then that starts to generate some questions which they can then answer through some sort of data visualization interaction?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's horses for courses. There are going to be times and appropriate audiences where infographics are the right thing, other times for data visualization. And actually, as you suggest, oftentimes it's going to be a combination of the two that can really bring something to life. One thing that we do a lot internally, and it links very nicely to the last panel as well, is we take something like one of these pop-ups, like you see here, this nice blue IIeX pop-up, and we get a life-size printout of a consumer with some key data, which is clearly nothing more than an infographic.
Infographic, yes.
We bring that into the room with us in meetings, pull it up, stick it at the table, take a chair away, so the consumer is literally at the table with us, which we find is a really great way to remind everybody. There's got a few key data points on there, whatever, but it just very visually brings the consumer into the room. But behind that, we'll also have some more detailed, interactive return of the results, of a way for people to be able to walk through the research, the insights that we have with management, and really help bring it to life, and also giving people the tools to be able to do it and play with the data themselves when they get back to their desk. But if you just give the tool alone, then people go so what. They need, sometimes you do need that first spark of one or two snippets of little aha moments for people to want to dig further. So that's why I think you're absolutely right, the two often go hand in hand.
Right.
I really like your point, because I think if we want to have more return on investment, on the insights and the data that we find and that we gather, we need to market them better. And if you look at marketeers, they have all kind of tools to trigger people's attention, to let them engage with certain marketing material. We need to have a broader tool set of all kinds of techniques to engage audiences, to engage internal stakeholders. And I think it's great to see that the banner can trigger that, an infographic can trigger that, but in the end, what do we want? We want that people engage with the insights and with the data. And we need to think more like a marketing person in that regard. And infographics are one of the tools.
Right, right, okay.
So basically, because that's, I'm building on that, because I felt that infographics were lately more and more used as a marketing tool for us, also to position on the agency side. I'm happy to hear that also on the internal client side, it's a very helpful tool. And what we do is create more touch points for our output. And that's actually very helpful, because I felt that infographics were lately more and more used as a content marketing tool just on the agency side. It's very good to hear that it's also the other way around. Yeah.
I think the excessive use of infographics in content marketing, though, has really made it a very challenging thing to make an infographic relevant, because anywhere you go on the web now, you're going to run into an infographic from somebody using that as a tool to get eyeballs for a blog post or something. And so the quality bar keeps rising as far as what's required to make it really a punchy graphic. But I think it's important to still try, because too many times we shortchange ourselves in spending 95% of our effort doing a project and then just having a little sliver of effort at the end trying to figure out how we polish that up and make it more presentable and more digestible for the internal client audience. Any infographic or visualization we've ever done, it's never been at the request of the client. It's just been because we felt that they needed it.
But then I have a question to you too. How much do you start to see it now as an integral part, an integrated part of the reporting out of any major study? For example, I can see that some agencies start to use it not just as some sort of a sauce that you create long after the study has been completed, but it's actually part of the reporting process and integrated into the reporting process to just teasers, to invite people to engage more in the research results, the study itself. Is that the way you also see it in your work? Like, it's not just far after completion of the study, but as a part of reporting it out?
I think it's increasingly more and more so, I think. The reality is it tends to be the bigger, the larger pieces of research that you think about that engagement up front. More often than not, with an average piece of research, it's more like, as you say, after the fact, you think, oh, maybe we should do this or that. The ones which you thought about more, a big segmentation study where you need to get engagement across the entire organization, then we have done planning of that up front. One further thought that you kind of raised there is, and I think it was what you were saying, Jason, as well, is I think there are now so many, as we say, so many infographics that people are exposed to. And I think there are also a large number of what I would call lazy infographics, where people just take the research report or the old-fashioned 80 slides or whatever it was, pick the 30 best ones and put those graphs, and they may turn them from graphs into some other something to represent that graph, but it's ultimately just the result tables for 15 or 20 charts all put on one page, which is worse than just getting the report, because you think that you're looking for the insight and it's just not there. And often, and it's the same actually, I think, with data visualization, infographics, all of this area, bringing data to life. I think the role of insights teams, of research teams, is not to just report everything, but is to distill what is really important here. Less is more. And I'd rather see a data visualization that was really simple, or an infographic that had one or two very key insights that jumped off the page that really got people excited to go and look more, than trying to present everything. And
all right, well, that probably leads us to the next question, where we've used up half the time. I've got past one question. So, however, the discussion on infographic, there happens to be a question here about infographics, so why don't we go to that one, which is, well, what makes a good infographic? I think you've already started answering that, but maybe we can continue with some of the others to
to build on the comments, does that mean that we have new capabilities on the team? Because I cannot expect traditional researchers to build infographics, because to me that's more creative designer kind of job. So does that also change the profile of the people working on data visualization as well as infographics to more creative types and artistic types, so to say? Do you hire then against that profile?
Well, I know for us, and we're small and boutique, but we're also fairly youthful, the gray hair notwithstanding, and there's only one person on the team that doesn't program a computer language of some sort. So everything we do is almost entirely done internally, just because we happen to have that weird sort of collection of, post-2K skill sets. And there's a lot of stuff out there if you have some basic web development skills somewhere in the organization where you can go out and grab things and glue them together in interesting ways and come up with some pretty powerful stuff. But that said, there's still things like art and design work that you need someone that has that creative energy as well, because it's not, you can't take data and give it to a scientist and expect to get back a painting, right? It doesn't quite work that way.
I think there are three elements to a good infographic. It's great insight, an insight that actually will trigger action within the wider organization. It needs to bring something to life, a story to life, so there's some storytelling involved as well, so you need good copy next to great consumer insights. And then there is the artwork. So I think if you want to do it well, it's three people who work together. Somebody who is more like a storyteller, who can write great copy, the researcher who knows which insight will actually trigger action within the organization. And then there is also somebody who can make great designs. And it's by those three people being in the same room, collaborating, working together, I think that a great infographic comes to life or is created.
I would agree with you, Tom, but I would say, I think of those three, I think that's the right order as well, and getting the design is the end point, right? And what I see far too often is people going straight to the design and, oh, we've got a study that's all about payment in transit, so we're going to design 3 or 4 fantastic graphs all based around trains or buses, and then think about what data to put in it, and then at the very last moment they think about what the data points are we can squeeze in, which is completely wrong, and those are the ones, that the lazy infographics that people look at, go, oh, pretty, but then nothing comes of them.
Makes me think of the very first presentation of today, which was about behavior change. Actually, what we want as researchers is create change in the behavior of people within organizations. And first we need to find out what is the behavior we want to change, and then we work on a tool that will make that behavior change happen. So it's first about which insights and what do we want to change within the organization, and then let's say the creativity in terms of storytelling and design definitely comes second. Yeah.
Well, there's one caveat to that, because data visualization was to see data from a different way. So now we're going to the very back end of a study and not the extraction of the insight itself. And I think that data visualization technique should also be seen as a way to look at the data, the original data, in a different way. So for example, what InfoTools does has little to do with the sharing, not in and by itself, it's also looking at the data for people who are more visually oriented. So it's also to have a different take. And that's to me the difference between data visualization, which is about extracting the insight, so looking really at it from a different angle. And then the graphic side, which is the 3 layers, as you just said, but that's more about conveying the message and sharing the insight with the outside world and prompting an action with it. So that's why I keep it separate, the data visualization and infographic part.
Okay. Right, well, a question for the clients. I guess that's you, Tony. How do you brief, no, sorry, there's 2 questions actually. who would do well, putting together the visualization in your organization? Do you have a specialist team or any special designers to do that?
Internally within our client organization, no, we don't. Again, it depends if it's for an external, it's for the media, whatever, and as we've done a study, then yes, the comms department would brief externally. But for internal, for what I would consider the more proper use of data visualization, no. And sometimes it's me sitting at very basic tools that even I can use myself,
yes,
developing something. Because as I said, the design is the last part. And I give you an example because I think it helps to bring it to life. One of the visualizations, or is it visualization or infographic, you can decide later, was going back a few years when we were looking at our markets around the world. We had so much data. At MasterCard, one thing we're not short on is data, but getting insight from it was difficult. And actually, something really simple like helping people understand the state of each market. So one thing we did was look at what's, for each market, for each country, what's the total payments, so what's the total consumer spending in that market? That comes from one data source. A second data source tells us how much of that payments is going on credit cards or debit cards. So it is electronic versus cash and older forms of payment. And then within that, what's MasterCard share relative versus Visa or Amex or anybody else? And then we had other layers within that. Really simple, but no one had ever looked at it because all of those data came from different suppliers, and some of it was internal, and we wouldn't share our internal data with our external suppliers.
No, sure.
So no one had a simple picture to say, this is what each market looks like. We just created that and just did something incredibly simple that said, by market, what does that map look like? And we broke all kinds of rules. If you read all the literature, you absolutely shouldn't do that by concentric circles because the eye finds it very difficult to tell apart different sizes of concentric circles. But it created a lovely bullseye that said, right in the middle, that's where we make our money, and what's the size of the pie in different markets. And it completely revolutionized for our relatively simple country managers who didn't understand where their opportunity was. Was our opportunity going after cash? Was it going after competitors? And even our CEO started using that chart when talking to investors to say, actually, as a company, the reason you don't need to worry about and keep comparing us to Visa is because only 15% of payments worldwide are electronic, and our real competitor is cash, and 85% of the market is unpenetrated. And kept showing, and every time we got a question about Visa or Amex, we'd just point to that one chart and show, look, it's all about the 85%.
Yep.
So the point I'm making is, who did that? I did that in PowerPoint.
All right.
It's a 2-minute job. Could it have been done more beautifully? Of course it could have been done. But actually it comes back to as you said, what's the behavior, what's the insight that we want to drive, and then what's the best way to present that?
Right, okay.
I also believe that, for example, I'm working a lot with designers, and interaction design does that. But you can draw the analogies with driving a car very fast. I mean, you want to see what your speed is or get the warnings without taking your eye off the road. So a good data visualization infographics is like a dashboard of a car that you need to be warned, have your signals without actually really taking your eyes off the road, because an executive needs to keep driving. And it just needs to see that it's driving too fast or too slow, or that gas is almost done, or like the RPM is too high. So that's actually that's also why I believe that to have that artist or that interaction designer on the team at some point is very important to allow management, executives to keep driving without getting the signals, without taking the eye off the road.
Okay, maybe just one last question then to have time for. And that is either on the client side, that if you want to get a data visualization done, what sort of brief would you provide? And for the others, how would you receive a brief or wish to receive a brief?
To be honest, if I look at briefings that we get for projects, in some cases, in the good instances, the people at the client side already have an idea who's my audience and what do I want to achieve. So they already have an idea what's the type of behavior I want to change, which is very good if you have that upfront, because then you can do, even with your research that you do, some reverse engineering and go after those insights that you will need to visualize and to then have that behavior change. So if there is a briefing, it's more about what do I want to achieve, not how does it need to look like. Because I think that's something that you need to leave in the hands of specialists. In your case, it's like a graph that will have more effect than a traditional one or a five slider, which is something you can do yourself and just get it out there and make sure it has impact. But if you want a wider, a stronger behavior change within the organization, people who know how to visualize something, how to trigger the eye of an audience, can help you to be more successful. But I think a good briefing coming from a client should not talk about this is what I want in terms of format, this is what I want in terms of how it needs to look like, which story it needs to tell, this is the change I want. And then it's up to the specialists, together in collaboration with the client, to craft, let's say, a campaign, because that's almost what it is, to market those insights and create the change.
Right. Okay.
If I just come back on that, because I agree wholeheartedly, with one exception that I think sometimes within a client organization, and I've worked across different companies, the internal culture means that there is greater acceptance, and that's where I think a client agency can help lead the supplier to say, absolutely right, I'm not focused on what the specific data points are, the insights, the behavior changes, right? But within our culture, these are things that work better, and these are the things that work less well.
True, true. You always need to have a couple of people at the client side that you work closely together with, who you can use as a pre-test group almost of the communication material to see what needs to be tweaked to work within this organization and its specific culture. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Perhaps we've just got time for one or two quick questions from the floor. Should there be any? Anyone want to ask a question of our panel from any of the comments that have been made so far?
This is your opportunity to work on your credits if you're a fee or a me or whatever. So
Yes.
shoot your questions.
As you can see, we haven't set up any plants for questions. But okay, well in that case we'll get on to the final part, which is the awarding of the DIVA award, or the Data Insight Visualization Award. So, and I'd just like to introduce that with a quick short story. I was myself particularly interested to come to this conference in Amsterdam because I lived in Amsterdam 55 years ago as a child, and that reminded me of how I got to learn about things, and that was by playing, as kids do, and particularly by touching. And the experience of learning by touching with playing on the radio dials or playing with my Lego set. Now, I'd just like to fast forward 30 years to the time that we started the Info Tools company with an objective to make obtaining of insights from market research data easier. And therefore, what we had in mind was a tool that people would want to engage with, would want to touch the data and in fact play with it. Something like using a toy, and we talked about calling the company Info Toys, or that idea, but the general consensus was, well, toys is about kids, and after all, this is for adults. And we thought, well, we can't say, well, we do adult toys. I think people wouldn't quite understand what it was that we were doing. But nevertheless, we still believe, I think, that using data visualization to obtain the insights, I guess, rather than maybe the infographics that show the insights, does require something that attracts the user to want to touch it, and that there's really a different level of, or a higher level of learning that comes from touching than just from viewing. I mean, for example, you can't really learn to drive a car by watching a video. You do really need to get the feel for it. So anyway, our purpose of sponsoring or co-sponsoring the DIVA Awards is to celebrate and promote data visualization within Insights space, and as a value-added way to help the industry build capability and how we tell stories with the data and insights that's collected. As research users, we can get allow us or clients to get closer to the customers. Well, after some debate among the judges, and Tony was one of the judges, we agreed that there was one clear winner, and from the many entries we selected the one that was called interactive visualization of gamer segments by the company Insights Meta. And this project was led and developed by Jerry Smith, who's described as the research ninja. And that Insights Meta happens to be represented here by Jason here. But I can assure you Jason was not one of the judges, so there was no funny business going on there. And what we found was that the gamer segment or visualization, interactive visualization of gamer segments was in fact very much an interactive visualization. One in fact that you could touch. I enjoyed touching it and watched it move about and change in a really interesting animated way. And it also allowed the user to explore some of the dimensions with great interest. And as one judge commented, I really liked it, and the execution is beautiful. The relative size of bubbles, because they're sort of size bubbles, we mentioned those before as well, can help clear targeting decisions. And another judge referred to it as being playful, which again is that sort of theme along the toys. And so we congratulate Jerry and the Insights Media team for their great work. And I happen to have the trophy here, having carried it in my luggage all the way from New Zealand. So congratulations. And pass on our congratulations to Jerry.